Ladies and gentlemen, one of the biggest crypto gaming narratives of 2021 was making money playing crypto games. Nowadays, a lot of people like to speculate on tokens, launch pads, etc. But I wanted to take a step back here because as someone that at some point had no money in cryptocurrency and was looking for ways to make money, I had two things that ended up popping up as possibilities. The first one was airdrops, farming them, seeing if I can get enough points to actually get something meaningful. The second one being, and this is the one we're talking about on this video, making money playing crypto games. I've been fortunate enough to actually be a person to make money playing crypto games. I will give you a couple instances of past stories of me making a bunch of money playing crypto games, etc. So hopefully you can take this knowledge and use it for your own trades in the future, and maybe you'll be one to play crypto games as well and make $100 a day, because yes, I have made over $100 a day playing crypto games in the past. So if you enjoy this kind of content, as always, like and subscribe. Disclosure, I am not your advisor. I'm simply a man on the internet that likes to yell about crypto gaming coins on the internet. Do your own research on everything, and let's get right into it. So the first one I wanted to talk about is the big hype one right now. It's big time. Big time has been absolutely skyrocketing, and this is one of the key instances that people don't really understand of how a crypto gaming token performs during its life cycle. I'm going to break it down to you in the simplest of terms. Whenever a crypto game comes out with an economy, massive news, a bunch of people are hyped for it, this is what happens. It's usually extremely easy to make money in the game, and there is absolutely no friction in terms of NFTs and crafting. At some point, very early on, a couple days in, there is going to be this thing called a nerf. What happens is they make it more difficult for those NFTs to produce the token, in this case, big time. And as a result, it creates more friction and more necessity, aka demand, for the big time token. They continue to do this, making it more and more and more difficult to get this big time token through crafting. And so at some point, there's a dynamic shift where instead of it taking 48 hours to craft an hourglass to, farm the big time token in the game, it'll start taking 72 hours, 108 hours, etc., until there comes a point where the demand has an equilibrium, and that's when the opportunity essentially ends. You don't want to be caught at the latter end of this whole cycle of things getting more and more and more difficult, because once we reach that top and people say, okay, well, this is difficult enough, earnings drop off, and then it's not really something lucrative to look into. The reason big time was so good and the reason we got in so early is, first off, the early access kicked off. People were really excited about the economy unveiling. A ton of people started playing the game. The DAU numbers actually reached record highs for the crypto gaming space overall. Maybe not Axie Infinity, obviously, but for the time, it wasn't a big deal. Big time had been listed on a lot of centralized exchanges, which is exactly what you want and something I'm going to be talking about on some of the other tokens that we have on this list. But here's how you do it. You need to make sure that you get in early. Early access codes, scholarships, pilot programs, whatever you want to name it. There are plenty of programs out there in crypto gaming where you do not have to invest to get into it. On big time, they allowed people to get cracked hourglasses. Unfortunately, you did need to put some money down to rent out spaces. The rental feature on big time was slept on for a very long time. It was only recently when people started figuring out rentals were actually hyper profitable, but at one point, people were renting out their assets for dirt cheap, which is where the opportunity rose to go ahead, grab hourglasses on the market, buy some of these spaces, time wardens, rent them for a month, and farm the first couple of months of life cycle in a crypto gaming token, because that's where the opportunity is at. Of course, the asset prices began to skyrocket as it became more and more difficult to craft the big time token. So obviously people are buying up this big time token. They still see it as a valuable asset to own. Has corrected from the 90-cent mark, but big time is a capital intensive game. If you have the capital to get into it, you can make money. I've made over $100 a day playing big time before, and I'm sure, even to this day, people are probably making even more than that. So the second game is Theta Arena. Now, Theta Arena is one of my failures. I wanted to talk about some of my failures in the crypto gaming space to educate you on what not to do, all right? Because I just gave you an example of what to look for. Now I'm going to give you an example of what not to look for. I lost 100% of my portfolio value on Theta Arena. I made nothing on this token. Here are the red flags. When you have an extremely high mint price on all of your NFTs, and you have a game which has a ludicrous unlock schedule, and I'll break it down for you. Pretty much people are earning way too much in the beginning. The NFTs are selling for a heck of a lot of money, and the development team essentially forgets that the NFTs even exist. They just keep doing their thing like a regular game, and the economy just goes to the, I'm not even going to say it. It just goes to the dumps very, very quickly. And I'll tell you why. On big time side, they make it more difficult. There's a skill there. Over time, equilibrium gets found. On Theta Arena, there is no equilibrium. The only equilibrium is that Theta Arena is selling more boxes. So there is essentially a Ponzi scheme, right? It just keeps going and going and going and going until you're just pretty much dead. The big problem with Theta Arena 2 was as the game's token began falling in price, they made it more difficult to withdraw it. So instead of actually trying to fix the economy, they just tried to stop the bleeding by making the hole a little bit smaller. But guess what? There were more and more and more and more and more tokens hopping out there with bots infiltrating everything. Theta Arena fell apart. Nobody could really withdraw anything. And yeah, we've got the situation today where this is a wonderful game. Theta Arena is awesome, but unfortunately, it is a game where you cannot make money. This was also a game that didn't really have a very good pilot system, but a game that did have a very, very solid pilot system was PegAxi. PegAxi at one point actually flipped Axie Infinity in terms of volume. It was literally for one day, but I remember this day because I was an investor in PegAxi during the time. I bought over 40 Pegas. At one point, the floor of these Pegas was almost over $2,000, so we had a lot of money invested into PegAxi. I had a lot of scholars playing PegAxi for me. I was making thousands of dollars every single day, and my scholars were also more than spoiled, making Viz, I believe, was the token, as well as PGX. I had a spreadsheet out there actually calculating how much we would be making per day. The easiest way to make money on PegAxi at that time was literally to find someone to give you a scholarship. Everybody needed someone to bring a scholarship. Here's the problem, however. As an investor in games like PegAxi, in games like Axie Infinity, in games like Big Time, the number one way to be profitable isn't actually playing the games. And this is a big one here. The best way to be profitable in games like this is by selling the shovels. I know, it's crazy. Buy the shovels, create more shovels, and then sell those shovels, and then take profit before it all goes to the dumps. I actually timed my exit on PegAxi perfectly. We actually covered this channel on this channel back in 2022. Here's how it went. So I remember in January, there were a bunch of influencers, Bryson, ton of people talking about PegAxi. PegAxi's volume was climbing, and the mint to burn ratio was heavily favoring the burns. So that was great. We were burning more than we were creating. The price was pumping like crazy. But at one point, if you don't actually fix the amount being given to the economy, there's going to be that point, kind of the equilibrium point, where it doesn't actually become an equilibrium. It just becomes an imbalanced act where everything falls apart. And what I'd notice is every 7 to 14 days, there was a massive, massive amount being minted and burned. Of course, there are locks, unlocks, but specifically during this time, I'm guessing all these guilds at the same time were taking profit. And so you would see these massive days of burning, massive days of minting as more and more Pegas were being created. There was this very interesting announcement, which I thought was really funny. It was the Valentines Day Event, where PegAxi was actually offering people an opportunity to burn the Viz token or the PGX token, whatever you want to call it. And they were letting people do this for these limited edition Pegas. But coincidentally, that same day, the whole VC guild unlock was happening at the same exact time. And that was the day I sold everything, because I realized that they were trying to hype up this event to be able to try to match the amount of burns that were currently happening versus the mints. Unfortunately, the mints dominated. And after that day, that game went to the dumps and it died. There was no coming back after that day. The second that there was more being minted than burned, every day after that, it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. So when you get these telltale signs where it goes like, you know, there's a huge mint going on, there's also a heck of a lot of events going on at the same time, and the burn ratio isn't looking as attractive as it was before, then it probably means that they understand that something very bad is about to happen. So that's your time to get out. As a person that's a scholar, though, you don't care. Just play the game as long as you can until it becomes unprofitable. Sell your tokens before events like that happen and get the heck out of there, because you know what's going to happen at the end of that story. Smooth Love Potion. This is Axie Infinity's SLP. We infamously called this on my Why I Sold My Axies. SLP's decline was pretty outrageous, to say the least. So what happened with SLP? First off, SLP was very attractive for a very long time. There were a lot of people that wanted to get into Axie Infinity, and so people were aggressively buying this up. It didn't actually have that much volume. It just had a heck of a lot of people that needed it to actually function in the game. So what was the doomsday scenario for SLP? Well, for one, if you're playing the game, people were making somewhere around $10 to $20 every single day on average Axies, which is perfectly fine as long as capital keeps coming in. But you've got to ask yourself, at what point is there just too much capital entering a system to the point where it can't handle it anymore? Well, that was when Axie Infinity began to change the AXS breeding fees. Every single time AXS breeding fees were changed, the price of AXS absolutely skyrocketed. If it reminds you of Big Time, well, yeah, they used a very similar model with AXS, and that's why we had these crazy all-time highs. I remember when I got into Axie Infinity, pretty much the day after they changed the breeding fees, and these absolutely skyrocketed to $20, and then they pulled back to 10, and they kept going. You know what people do with these speculative coins. But overall, the play for Axie Infinity and SLP was realizing that at one point the bubble was going to burst. And I didn't catch the top. But once the bubble began to burst and asset prices severely declined for quite some time, and a couple million Axies were there with a player count that couldn't sustain the growth of the amount of Axies that were entering in the ecosystem, what I'm trying to explain is too many Axies, not enough people playing the game. That is a recipe for disaster, because you've got to realize that the amount of Axies being created only accelerated as long as it was profitable to breed with SLP. If SLP was not profitable to breed with, then there is no reason to buy SLP unless you're trying to manipulate the price to increase it. And at that point, there's going to be people buying SLP to continue to breed these Axies and continue to dump on the market. It's only a loop that is toxic and doesn't work out long term unless you have sinks, which appropriately SLP has developed enough sinks. Obviously, you cannot earn $100 a day playing this game anymore, but there were people back then that were making a heck of a lot of money with some of the more competitive teams on Axie Infinity. So there was that opportunity there. The last one I wanted to touch base on was Silk Token. Silk Token was a big one because free-to-play players could actually pilot. A vast majority of the profit that I made on Silk was made because I was piloting ancient tanks. This was more of a skill to earn game, because not only did you need to have 1200 honor, which is pretty easy to access with if you just had a gala account for quite some time, lucky you. But on top of that, if you were deity rank, you would be earning significantly more than people that were on the lower ranks. So people that were in deity were getting very easy access to the top tanks in the game, because why would someone that's mid-rank play the game if they first off would not even be making as many tokens as if they gave you a 50-50 split on the top? But on top of that, they have to spend hours upon hours playing every single day. At one point, I was making over $200 playing spider tanks every day. The big problem was the liquidity for the actual Silk token. It wasn't very high. It was a depreciating asset, and this was a ticking time bomb by all means of accords. The DAU wasn't increasing as fast as it needed to increase, and at one point actually ended up decreasing. Game media is in all kinds of drama, but you wanted to go ahead and hop on during the May Mayhem when Gala is putting a lot of focus onto the Spider Tanks ecosystem and is beginning to see it as a success, and then you want to get the heck out of there right after, because they're probably going to forget about it eventually. Once numbers start declining, you've got to have an exit strategy. I lost a fair amount off of the assets that I actually bought, somewhere around 40%, but I made more than that off of the pilot program. So play for free made me significantly more. I actually profited off of Spider Tanks overall, even though I lost buying the assets. Just piloting people's ancient tanks because I was a deity ranked player with all my other friends, that ended up being a pretty significant profitable event for me. So I hope I gave you some context on some of the crypto games over time that have been hyper profitable, as my strategy surrounding them, some of my thoughts. Hopefully this will help you make $100 a day in 2024 as more of these crypto games give opportunities such as these. The moral of the story is these tokens will not last forever. These opportunities will not last forever. So take advantage of them while they're hot. Get the heck out of there before things start turning sour, and have some fun, because making money playing a video game is something that only happens in crypto unless you're an esports player. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Thank you for watching this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section in regards to future videos and what you want to see. Stay classy, and that's all.